On a mission given to me by Woody Shaw, Sunship, Dizzy, and John Kahn, dedicated to pursuing a piece of our cultural heritage through interviews with my music heroes, this is The Jake Feinberg Show. Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is a live edition of The Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you live on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast and the Jim Parisi Show and the Jake Feinberg Show. And we can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today as I really continue to get down deeper into the weeds with my peers about current progressive sonic expansion in music. It is a necessity for younger cats who have had digital music crushed into their eardrums for the last 2 or 3 decades. They don't understand space. They don't understand feel. But there is a small minority of cats who tend to lean towards improvisational music, music that bends and burns on the bandstand. They've been doing it for a long time. And quite frankly, they are the vestiges and the lineage and quite possibly the cats who will make up for the links in the chain that have been broken along the way. Brian Haas, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jake.
How are you, brother?
Doing good. How you doing, brother? I'm not used to intros making me tear up.
Well, we all need to get our feelings out, man. You know, I mean, I do that. That was just off a riff off the top of my head, too. There's no written stuff out. Let's just start right there, man. I mean, can you talk about, when did you first feel completely liberated on the bandstand? And what I mean by that is when you would go up there with minimal rehearsal, no one likes to use the R word that much, but go up there, you didn't know what was going to come out of your instrument, and you burned people's faces off. When did that first start happening in your musical career?
I mean, that sort of emptiness is like one of my greatest strengths and also one of my greatest weaknesses. I mean, that's just sort of been who I am when I get to the piano. My whole life. I mean, I've been improvising on the instrument since I was very young. I probably started improvising on the piano when I was 2 and didn't really start studying the piano till I was about 4. My parents got me into the Suzuki classical method. For a long time, classical music was my way of doing that. And as a youth, I always played classical music in a very unique way on the piano. And it was always controversial. I mean, I would always win competitions basically by forgetting huge swaths of the piece and then just improvising in the style of the composer that I happened to be playing at the time.
Do we have video of that? I think that would go viral on YouTube. Do we have video of this stuff?
I mean, there is. My dad has like stacks and stacks of VHS tapes.
Haas, you're burning. I didn't mean to break your thought process. So you won. So it was controversial because parents would be like, "He didn't play it right." They'd whine and.
Especially the teachers of other students would then protest because I only lost one competition during my whole little mediocre prodigy phase, and then after I lost that competition, I was kind of done with classical music. I didn't even realize I could lose, and that was like a sort of national competition down in Houston, Texas. I don't know. I think I got second or something, but after that, I was done with classical music. I just realized, man, if I'm going to be improvising at the instrument, I just need to be improvising on my own terms and not within the confines of these other composers' ideas. So, but I've felt for the most part pretty comfortable at the instrument, almost too comfortable, and so, yeah, the people that would protest me winning the classical competitions were generally the teachers of the students because they knew the pieces well enough to know that I was just making it up. Whereas the judges a lot of times were just exhausted, and they were just looking for somebody with competence. And so I would just always just kind of BS my way through that stuff. I've always been really lucky at the piano. The piano is, I mean, I started playing when I was so young. It's always felt like an extension of me in some strange way.
Well, I mean, there's so much going through my head right now. Can you talk about, did you, I guess a lot of the cats, I mean, they beg, borrow, and steal from their mentors or the people they looked up to. And then ultimately they put their own original voice in it, in their music. I mean, do you feel like when you went off script on those conformist classical pieces that in fact you were beginning to find your voice at that time, whether you knew it or not?
Absolutely. I mean, that is how most of us learn in some strange way. It starts off as imitation and then hopefully it becomes innovation.
Let's go deeper on that. Can you talk about when did you start writing your own compositions? I mean, was it after you pivoted out of classical music? And
no.
Yeah.
I started writing my own stuff when I was 5 years old, 6 years old. I always wanted to be a pop singer. I always thought I would be a pop singer. I mean, for the 5th grade talent show, I mean, I won the 5th grade talent show with a song that I wrote for my mom called "I'm Tired of You."
Is there any way we can we hear that? Can you sing that right now?
I can give you. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I can remember it's why you always coming down on me, trying to tell me what I'm supposed to do. I know that I can live my life fine without the help of you, and I'm so tired of you. I'm tired of you. I'm tired of you telling me what to do. I'm tired of you. I'm tired of you. I'm tired of you telling me what to do. So that's the basic.
That's what we love on Power Talk. I thank you, brother. I've had cats like Henry Gross, great folk guys, riffing. But you were 5 years old when you put that together?
No, I wrote. That was 5th grade talent show.
That was 5th grade. That is still chops. I mean, first of all, fantastic work. But I mean, getting to the point where, wow, you blew me away. I kind of lost my train of thought there. You want to take over the show? Did you?
I mean, I always wanted to be a pop singer. I mean, when I was in elementary school, my heroes were Annie Lennox, Huey Lewis,
Sure.
Michael Jackson. I mean, the first music I ever spent my own money on was Prince. I mean, as a young man, I bought every single thing that Prince ever came out with. I always thought I would be a pop singer. That was always my ultimate goal. And I studied voice and piano from a very young age. And when I was maybe 13, 12, I started to go through puberty. And my voice teacher and I didn't really like each other very much, but she was a wonderful teacher. And then she decided to kind of steer me away from vocal music just because her son was always competing with me to get lead in the church musicals and the school musicals, and he would always play second fiddle to me. And so I just remember one voice lesson, I was singing Italian arias, and she just sort of came up to me and said, "Hey, your voice has gotten terrible, and I think you should just focus on piano. Since you've gone through puberty, you can't really sing anymore, and nobody's going to like your voice, And then I realized in hindsight, like, oh, she was doing that because her son wasn't getting any of the leads. So, I mean, if not for that sort of strangely competitive vocal teacher, I'd probably still be singing live to this day. But she just said, "You're a brilliant pianist. You need to stop singing and focus on piano." And so I trusted her, and that's what I did.
Well, I mean, in some ways, that was a cathartic moment because you went off and. I'm curious. I had a chance to catch a couple of hangs with Reed Mathis, real precocious guy, very smart, same like you, pushing boundaries, overcoming people's insecurities, and ultimately sort of going against the grain in a lot of ways. I mean, just from a macro point of view, Jacob Fred Jazz Odyssey, I mean, was it a completely organic unity? How? I mean, in the sense of the fact that I don't know everybody else in the original group, but just the two being being who you guys are, headstrong, smart, street scholars, not caught up with conformist, classicalization of music, believing this, in Reed's case, the bass player's role is inhibiting in some ways, the traditional bass player's role. Was the group just, how did a bunch of street scholars come together like that?
Man, it's total luck. I mean, the way I learned how to get myself situated within the jazz language and the jazz idiom is that, I started Jacob Fred Jazz Odyssey when I was 19 just to learn how to play the music. I was going to the University of Tulsa, and I went there on a full ride for classical music. And very quickly, I realized that, practicing piano 8 to 12 hours a day wasn't going to make me super happy. I was training for the 1997 Van Cliburn. I did my junior recital first semester of my freshman year. I did my senior recital second semester of my freshman year. I was amassing huge amounts of material, and I wasn't having any fun. And I looked around and saw that all the guys in the jazz program were dressing wackily, Hey, R2D2, stop. No. Got dogs.
Hey, man, yeah, put them in line. That's fine. No, so you saw that they were living the bohemian lifestyle, dressing down and having a ball.
They looked like they were having the time of their lives, and I've always been an improviser. And so I started hanging out with Jacob Fred's first drummer, Sean Layton, and he was like, look, if you really want to learn how to do this, the only way to learn how to do it is by actually doing it. And I was like, okay, cool. And I was fearless, and I started gigging when I couldn't even play jazz. And I was always doing all the left-hand stuff. We couldn't really find a bassist at the University of Tulsa who could hang with us. So I, just had a Fender Rhodes and would just turn the bass up and use my left hand. And eventually that drummer, Sean Layton, he was just like, look, man, this is cool and all, but we need like a real bassist who can actually swing, who can actually play. And all the bassists at TU were pretty square. And I just remember talking to some guy in the dorms, and, he was basically like, how's it going? And I was like, oh, man, it's going great. Everybody told me not to quit my day job, but I think I'm going to focus on jazz and improvised music and get out of classical. But I've got this problem. Nobody really loves my left hand. I have great facility, but it's hard for me to swing with my left hand and rock leads with my right hand. And he was like, man, have you heard of this prodigy here in town? And I was like, oh, yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
Everybody's
right.
a prodigy everybody's a prodigy in the Midwest, and,
Yep.
Try sending that dude to Russia and see if he's still a prodigy. So, so this one just like beautiful cat, I can't even remember his name. He was just like, look, man, I'm going to get you this kid's number, and you should call him. So, so this is back in the days of the home phone, so somebody gave me the home number, and I just remember calling the number, and like Reed's mom picked up, and I was like, hey, this is Brian Haas. I'm a student at the University of Tulsa, and I was just calling to speak to your son. And I remember Reed's mom was like, about what? And I was like, about playing music. I hear that he's precocious, and, we need a bassist in this band that I've started, and I'd like to see if I could hang out with him and see if he'd be appropriate. And she, I just remember her going, okay, and then she handed the phone to Reed, and I introduced myself. I was 19, he was 17, and he was super easy to talk to. He's verbose and has a great personality, and he suggested that I just come over, that his parents would be more comfy with that. So within a couple of days, I showed up at his house with the real book, and the first thing he and I ever played together was Bright Size Life by Pat Metheny.
Wow.
And we just sat there and played that song over and over again for an hour, and that was it. He and I have been playing together ever since.
This is a quick question for you, because when I interviewed Densmore a few years back, just Cosmic Transmission, but he was talking about like an album like Soft Parade, and obviously it's not a jazz album, but Manzarek was doing the same thing Haas was doing on the Fender Rhodes. He was trying to play the bass lines in his left hand, and they weren't getting enough punch. So they brought in cats like Harvey Brooks to the studio. And I guess my question is this, like when you first started playing jazz, even though you didn't necessarily know, quote unquote, how to play jazz, did sonically you get louder and that's why you wanted to bring in a thumper on bass, a guy who had his own voice? Because to me, it's like you play jazz, you can play standards, but ultimately Jacob Fred sonically became much louder. I mean, it was more of I don't want to say fusion, but it became a kind of a, just a headless horseman of the apocalypse, so to speak. I mean, was it the idea that you guys were increasing your sonic nature and that's why you needed to get a bass player?
No, not necessarily. It was just because the drummer was so brilliant. The guy that we really kind of based the band around, he was so brilliant. He was just like, dude, I can't just play with your left hand, man.
Yeah, he needed more stimulation. I see. Yeah.
Yeah, it just wasn't happening for him, And I mean, and Sean was just brilliant, completely brilliant. And and Sean was just like, dude, it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. And I'd be like, you're nice, man.
Yeah,
and he'd be like, no. Yeah. That song is everything, bro. Your left hand is not swinging. Yeah, your left hand cannot swing yet. And I mean, Sean was just like, he's my greatest musical teacher probably to this very day, other than Reed, And so, I mean, it really was, I really needed somebody to come in and help, or I was scared Sean was going to stop playing with me.
You recognized, I mean, I'd like to talk about, you said he was your greatest teacher, the drummer was, and Reed, but again, I know I perseverate sometimes on this program, but I talked to M2May last week, and he's like, cats go to school now for jazz. They can learn how to play John Coltrane, but that doesn't tell me anything about what they have to say. It's become tracing paper music. There's no way that Jacob Fred Jazz, even though Jacob Fred Jazz Odyssey had cats, I don't know if Reed was actually even out of high school yet, but you guys were in school for music. But can you talk about an experiential lesson on the bandstand that you learned from the drummer and or Reed? I mean, this is what's important for the young. Just riff on that.
Man, that's a difficult question because.
Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
It's a great question. It's a great question. It's just that, like, my gosh, I just started playing so much when I was still so young and, like, in such a formative time. That trombonist that we were with, probably the bandstand learning came mostly from the trombonist. His name was Matt Leland.
Wow.
And he's probably the greatest single trombonist I've ever heard in my life. It was like so easy for him, he just lost interest in it. Now he like manages and opens up new restaurants in Tulsa. But bandstand shit, that was all based around Matt Leland. He would scare all of us on stage. He was an incredible band leader and just like, he was intense.
Was it? No, but it was okay. I want to be clear about the intensity because, like, Van Morrison would fire a guitar player on stage during the set if he wasn't playing what he wanted. So, was there an edginess that kept you locked in on the edge, or what?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we were all scared of Leland. We were all
okay
because you just never knew what he was going to do. The guy had effortless, perfect pitch, could hear anything, could hear any melody. He had total recall, probably still does. I'm sure he does.
Yeah.
He's one of those cats that had perfect pitch and total recall. And, Jacob Fred, those early years, we had always 2 to 3 horns. What we were doing was very, very based on the music of Steve Coleman and the Five Elements and Ornette Coleman's Primetime. So there was a lot of structure, but there was more improvisation. So Leland would start something on the trombone, and if you didn't have that riff figured out, or if you weren't reharmonizing it or doing something in response to it within a matter of seconds, he was giving dirty looks and like making it very obvious to the audience and to the band that he was unhappy. So Leland was my greatest, whereas Reed and Sean were more passive on stage and more like just there to work and just try to get through the dang thing. Leland was very much like the taskmaster on stage. He was an incredible composer. he's one of those guys. Matt Leland, the trombonist, and Jacob Fred was one of those guys that just, melodies would come into his head. You just see him writing songs while he was sitting co-pilot in the van. I mean, sometimes he would try to write songs while he was driving. I mean, the guy was crazy.
But I mean, do you? I mean, granted, he was somewhat idiosavantish. I mean, he was a brilliant dude. But did you find that to be inspiring leadership by him scowling at you, or?
Yeah, it was inspiring and annoying and terrifying and exciting all at the same time. I mean, you had to get your ears in order to hang with this dude. I mean, that's the thing, man. If I go back and look at my past, I was so lucky with the unique, varied humans that I started Jacob Fred Jazz Odyssey with. I mean, in 23 years as a band, now we've had 16 total different members, and so everybody's been a great teacher in some way. But, man, those original cats were super, super heavy cats. All of them. But, Reed and Sean were great teachers off of the bandstand, whereas Matt Leland was just like a taskmaster. You made one wrong move. You played one chord that didn't make sense. I mean, he let everybody know. So I think, that was good for me because it forced me to get my ears dialed in, and it forced me to get, my taste and my class and my intelligence on stage. There was no room for, chilling out and having a one-chord jam. That was just not happening with Jacob Fred, not ever. It's there was just, it wasn't relaxing. It was hard work, and we were doing 200 shows a year. And, once we made it a trio, it was 275 shows a year, 250 or something. So, the education and the learning and the processing and the evolution was just this constant bombardment of me just being around players that were better than me, No,
it's you were basically on your maiden voyage to begin with. Let's be clear. You were not a jazzer. You were learning. That is, even stepping back from it for a minute, how within the first few years of the band, I don't think I realized that the band went through many different iterations over its lifespan. I know it went through some, but can you just go off on the idea? To me, it's again, I'm not a musician. I'm a journalist. And I'm just searching for authenticity. And so it's I guess what I'm trying to get at is a lot of times people say you ask great questions. That's why people get off on my show. But I don't even sometimes ask questions. And so I'm trying to get at the idea of perfection versus imperfection on the bandstand. And when you're playing improvisational music, why you don't want to flub a note? I get it. But can't a mistake sometimes, if somebody is not all over you and glowering at you or making it evident that they're unhappy with you, if everybody's just in that zone, can't that mistake take you to another level of music? Why does everything have to be? What is your take on perfection insofar as live musical performance?
Well, that's why we eventually voted Matt Leland out of the band.
You voted him out. Okay. All right.
Yeah, because we got tired of the constant. We got tired of the constant negativity and the constant judgment.
Exactly.
Whereas I learned a lot.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from his negativity and judgment on stage. I learned a ton from it. It made my ear better, and it made me a better musician. After I got to the point in the late 90s where I was able to play my ass off, and I was able to match him and hear what he was doing, and got my ear dialed in, I didn't need to be on stage with somebody who's just going to be mean. So, it is all about that balance. If Leland could have been less of a control freak, we might still be playing together. But that dude's such a control freak, he can't even play music right now because he's good. He's better than everybody,
Well, he couldn't handle. There was also something, I spoke to the bass player, did a couple of interviews with Miroslav Vicious, and he said that in fact, Joe Zawinul, he talked about playing music from the heavens. And I think that you're going to lock into this very quickly. This is idea that the music is coming through you. And when he was in Weather Report, the original iteration of Weather Report, he said Wayne Shorter could play music from the heavens. He could play music from the heavens. The cat that struggled with that was Joe Zawinul. And Joe Zawinul was much more in structured cat. So when when they would go off on in the heavens, Zalwina would go and just start kind of go down his Fender Rhodes, and he would start playing one of his tunes to get them out of that. And it came down to insecurity.
Yep.
And I just wanted, I mean, ultimately you can be a perfect pitch genius, perfect tone, everything, but man, you're going to be a pretty unhappy character, and you're going to project that on other people if you're uptight about perfection. And so, I mean, once the Bone Player was voted out, how did Jacob Fred transcend at that point?
Well, then we became a trio not too long after that. We had a guy, we'd been touring a lot. I'd been doing all the booking and all the business, and that was around 99. And we had an agent from the agency group, which at that time was like the third biggest booking agency on earth, who was really interested in the band. And his mom, after a divorce, had ended up in Tulsa, of all places. And so this booking agent came out. I remember in 99, he heard the full band as a 7-piece, and then he heard Jacob Fred Trio. And he and I talked on the phone, and he was like, "Hey, I'm not really interested in the big band. I like the trio." And I was like, "Well, that's the direction that we're headed anyway, because of the freedom." Because of the freedom. And so that really helped us make that change and do away with the larger ensemble. And so Jacob Fred became a trio in late 99 and signed with the agency group and a management company in late 99, early 2000. And Knitting Factory Records put out one of our first big national releases, and that was as a trio. And it's just about that fearlessness. It was sort of hard for us to leave the larger ensemble because there's so much going on in that, and it's so much fun. It's easier to get people to dance, and you've got horns up front and people rapping. I mean, I always thought if I wasn't going to be a singer, I wanted to be a rapper. We would practice freestyling for hours on end. So, I mean, I used to consider myself to be a freestyle hip-hop artist. And when we did moved it to a trio, I stopped freestyling and just focused on the Fender Rhodes and started just freestyling on that instrument. But the early days of Jacob Fred were very influenced by hip-hop and, like I said, Steve Coleman, Ornette Coleman. It was just about having the courage to make it a trio.
I think this is an extremely important crossroads in our conversation, because you had a 7-piece. It was can you talk about the instrumentation in the 7-piece?
The 7 to 8 piece was trombone, trumpet, saxophone. Saxophonist didn't like touring, but then guitar. The guitarist was brilliant. I learned a ton from him. Percussion, drums, myself on Rhodes, and Reed on bass.
So I guess here's the question: Did you guys, obviously you were into vocalization, hip freestyle rap, but how did you account for the idea of not having the frontline power horn section? Like, did you offset that with I mean, at that point you were playing your ass off. Did you use electronic effects to offset that? I mean, that is a lot of brass to let go of.
No, it was raw and dirty, man. It was just Fender Rhodes, electric bass, and drums. It was super, super punk rock, super simple. I mean, that was back before Reed was really using an octaver, but he would just play up high, and I would start banging the crap out of the low end of the Rhodes. I mean, that transition was super rough and rowdy and very, very dirty. And suddenly we were signed to the agency group. So suddenly we're going out and we're opening up for the Funky Meters and the Dirty Dozen Brass Band and Rebirth Brass Band and Charlie Hunter, and like opening up for these acts. And we're just like burning the freaking stage down and then saying, "Okay, cool. Thanks for the 40 minutes. I hope you guys can follow that." And I mean, that trio, we had Matt Edwards on drums because the original drummer had some health problems, and we put the percussionist on drums, like in the middle of a tour. He'd never played drums. He'd just been sitting next to this brilliant drummer for 4 years.
Right.
We're in the middle of a tour. We're in the middle of a tour. The drummer kind of goes down, and we're like, "Cool, we've got a day. we've got his drum kit in the trailer. Let's get you up to speed. And so suddenly the percussionist was the drummer.
Had he ever played traps before or never?
Not that we could tell.
I mean, this is
cool.
An experiment. The Jacob Fred Jazz experiment. I mean, this is an insane situation.
I know. We've got 100 more shows in the year, and just like literally in between East Coast and West Coast, we're just putting our percussionist on drums. And I don't know. He had a very, very unique approach, and he'd been sitting next to this brilliant drummer for years. So that's how Matt Edwards became our drummer. He became our drummer literally overnight. And wow. I mean, that trio with Matt Edwards, there's a record, you can find it. It's got a purple cover. It's called Self Is Gone. I mean, that record is burning album, and it's just a trio, and it's super raw, super dirty. And a lot of times, I was just in San Francisco and, hanging with Simon Lott, who just played with Reed and myself, and then my little brother was just like putting on funny old Jacob Fred songs to see if I could even tell what lineup it was and who was playing, and I couldn't tell. I mean, he put on something from 2001 with us at the Knitting Factory. I thought it was from 2009 with Josh Raymer on drums. I mean, it's just like, it's just this funny lineage of evolution, and I can't even tell the difference now that,
that's actually, that's surprising to me that.
I can't even hear who's playing. I don't even remember doing it.
I mean, to the worldwide audience, I guess, can you just explain what that means exactly? What does that mean to you that you can't tell the difference?
Well, we've had 16 different members, and in 23 years, we've got 27 official releases that were actually put out and promoted. And so it's this weird language that's been created, and I'm just kind of, at this point, a small part of. So, 27 albums, 16 members, everybody's into this language that was created on accident, this idiom, this dialect, if you will. And I mean, yes, I was sort of embarrassed that I couldn't tell, but I also thought it was really cool. I mean, like the current, Jacob Fred's still a trio with myself, Chris Combs, and Josh Raymer. And Jacob Fred was Combs and Raymer's favorite band when they were in middle school. So they obviously came into the band and reinvented it, but they were already very familiar with the language and the dialect that was already in place. So then these young cats come in and they evolve that dialect, and it all kind of starts to sound the same to me. I don't really go back and listen to my old stuff because I've already got 5 new things ready to go at any given moment.
Well, I mean, I don't care if it's, I don't care, any prolific producer, compositional producer, writer, songwriter that I've talked to, very few of them actually ever ruminate on their older stuff. I want to put a piece of music in right now for you, just to expand our ears and get the audience going here. This is off, let's see if you can recognize it. I'm sure you will, and then we'll break it down, okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
On this one, I want to do something completely opposite. yeah, it went after. You like hit it and then it went.
Even more, yeah. On your back.
Oh.
Music on the Jake Feinberg Show brought to you by the Stereo Hospital, the Circle Tree Ranch, Abbott Taylor Jewelers, and Craig Pretzinger of Allstate Insurance. And we thank them for their support so we can bring you that kind of just an incredible amount of diversity there, man. All right, break it down for us, brother. What was that?
That's just Matt and I improvising. I mean, the record I just put out with Matt Chamberlain is 100% improvised. Got 3 little secret overdubs on it that nobody would ever be able to notice that I went in and did after the fact just because of technical issues. You know, because we were just improvising. There were definitely a few times where not everything was actually, not all the lines were run
Yeah, right.
or whatever. I mean, there's like 3 tiny little overdubs on the whole record, and it's just super raw. It doesn't sound improvised. I mean, I remember, 4 or 5 months ago, I had to explain to Bill Milkowski, who's got incredible ears and who's a wonderful listener and incredibly empathetic, sympathetic journalist. I mean, I just remember I had to tell Milkowski, 4 or 5 times, like, no, I'm not kidding. It's just all improvised.
I know, Milkowski, man. I mean, he's got a great track record, but you must have opened him up. It must have been a cathartic experience for him, man. I'm not saying. I mean,
was really,
because go ahead. I mean, what was he having a hard time getting his brain around?
Just that it was really improvised. That we just made those songs sound like songs in a truly free, improvised setting. See, like that. This record that you just played some excerpts from, Prometheus Risen. That's my concept of free jazz. I think that free jazz should be fun and easy to listen to. I also enjoy, the forefathers of free jazz. One of my favorite records of all time is Love Cry by Albert Ayler. That record changed my life.
Why? Why?
Because it doesn't refer to anything that came before it.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely new. It sounds like children's music, like from outer space or something. I mean, the kind of music that tends to change me is the music that encourages me to have my own voice and find my own voice. I'm not blown away by derivative, well-executed stuff. What blows me away is dirty, innovative stuff, like where somebody's actually taking a risk. And that's why that was hard for Milkowski to wrap his head around, because the record I made with Matt, when you listen to it, it doesn't sound risky. It sounds very preconceived. But the truth is, when you get good enough at risk, nobody knows that you're taking a risk because it's just what you do.
Well, and I think, yeah, go ahead. Finish up, yeah.
So Milkowski was incredibly sweet about it, but he was just like, come on, Haas. Like, is that really all improvised? Like, you guys didn't talk about anything? You didn't say a word? You didn't even talk? And I was like, truth. We never said a word. We just improvised for 3 days. And then he got on a plane and flew back to Los Angeles. That's it. And then I spent months going through and trying to find pieces that relate to each other so that it would sound like an album. Because really, in 3 days, Matt Chamberlain and I came up with like 5 albums worth of material. Just us just being ourselves, just going in, sitting in the room together. The only time he used a separate room was when he was using that tape echo live, which you can see in the video. It's like a lot of these things sound like overdubs, and a lot of them sound like effects that we put on in post-production, but none of it is. That's what a badass Matt Chamberlain is. He doesn't need post-production. I mean, he's doing stuff live in the moment, 100% risky, that after the fact sounds like we went in and toyed around with it in post. And so that was really Milkowski's big question was, wait, there's no post-production on this? And the truth is, no.
I'm just surprised with Milkowski. I mean, the fact that he's always hung around with Pat Martino, that he's never been, experienced the visceral risks that can be taken. But this is important.
But on Prometheus Risen, it all sounds on the record that Matt and I put out. It all has a melody. It's all got a chord structure. It's a very unique take on free jazz. I mean, there's no gibberish. It's just clarity, And those are the songs that I chose. The songs that don't necessarily show the improvisational process. They just show raw improvisation. I mean, everybody's got a very short attention span right now, and I made Prometheus Risen specifically for that idea, like true improvisation in the moment that hits right from the second that you start. No process, no meandering, no soul searching. It's just like purely improvised melodies and harmonies. That's my take on free jazz. I think free jazz should be beautiful and easy to listen to. I don't think it should sound like ducks dying. Nobody wants to hear that shit. I'm sorry.
No, I got a lot. I want to talk to you about something. This is important. Whether it's the current iteration of Jacob Fred, you and Chamberlain, this is extremely important because a lot of music is so formulaic today. You go sit down. First of all, you're supposed to sit down. Music was not really made for that. But you go sit down, and there are cats on the bandstand. They're playing the same solo the same way every night. Okay? So please tell me a little bit about your adventures with Chamberlain playing unscripted music that sounds rehearsed, but that you never play the same song once. And tell me...
Yeah, I mean, we just did 10 shows. Every single night, we had to explain to people at the merch table. Same conversation. We had it about 30 to 50 times a night or 10 times a night or whatever. Maybe it seems like 50 after a while. I would make one announcement every night and say, hey, thank you guys so much for your ears, your nervous systems. Thank you for being here. The music that you're hearing is completely improvised, and we couldn't do it without you guys. And then we'd go to the merch table. We'd sell our new record, and all these musicians and fans, whatever, were coming up and saying, come on, there's no way. There is no way you guys were improvising that. And I'm like, well, what, you think I'm just telling lies on stage? And so Matt and I would have to explain individually to our different constituents each night that, yes, it was truly improvised. And I just think courage is lacking and within the the mental and spiritual emotional framework of our brothers and sisters on this planet right now. There's just like a lot of musicians who play the same set every night, and I can think of some serious badasses, I will not say any names, who are great improvisers, but they don't have the courage to actually get on stage and do that. They're scared they're going to lose their money, their fans, and maybe their wives and kids. I don't know. But, they're basically playing the same set every night, same basic solo every night, and they're lauded as the history of jazz. And that's why people aren't super interested in jazz right now as an art form. It's because the people that are being, propped up as the saviors of this art form, they're just turning it into a historical piece. They're forcing the jazz language to become classical music. It was never meant to be that. What I always loved about jazz, and the reason I put jazz in the name of the band Jacob Fred Jazz Odyssey, was to help people understand that jazz is a moment-to-moment risk. It's a lifestyle. It's so much more than music. It's about spirituality at its core. It's a spiritual, risky, undulating, never-resting art form. As I got older and I learned about capitalism, I'm like, oh, why the hell did I put jazz in the band name? But as a 19-year-old idealist, I thought it was important for people to know that what Jacob Fred was doing was jazz. I think my career could have been different. I don't have any regrets, but I think more people would probably listen to Jacob Fred if I didn't put the word jazz in there, because jazz has become a bad word because of the people that the jazz business puts on the cover of their magazines every month.
Right. Well, but here, I think also it speaks to the idea that music is now made for pacification. And if you're really going to try to make authentic burning music, you're going to have to be willing to not make a lot of money. But I wanted to ask you, you talk about this boldness, you talk about this fearlessness. I'm fascinated by it, and I'd like to ask you about whether you think that, well, first of all, it's a two-part question. Please talk to the audience about your use of psychedelics and how that opened you up and possibly created introspection for you to throw away all the perception, all the neurotic behavior. What you riffed on before is why cats are afraid to go up there and just be themselves. Did psychedelics have something to do with you losing that inhibition?
Absolutely. And I got really lucky. I was completely straight edge until I was 21. And I've always had a strong sense of self-preservation, and I've always really enjoyed taking care of myself. So I've always been very moderate with my psychedelic use, but I just got super lucky. The first time that I ever did a true psychedelic, I was 21 years old. Reed was my trip master, and he did a fantastic job. All we listened to was Hendrix, Coltrane, and Monk.
He had the whole set. He had the whole set list going. That's so. Did you eat mushrooms or was it LSD?
It was super clean, pure L. And
the best.
Reed was the master of my entire experience, and he did an incredible job.
Wow.
I mean, I had a full-blown kundalini explosion while listening to Hendrix. I started to feel tickles at the base of my spine. I did some flexes with my muscles that I later learned were like, muscular flexes that Chinese emperors have been doing for 3,000 years. And I brought my kundalini up into the top of my head. It came down into my body, and I'd had stomach problems and ulcers and IBS and Crohn's my entire life up to that point. And as the kundalini dropped down from my chest into my stomach, it bonded or congealed with all that poison and toxin and all those toxins and insecurity, and I lay there shaking as like pure black tar shot out of my stomach and into the cosmos as I listened to Hendrix turned up as loud as it could possibly go, and my life's never been the same. I haven't had stomach trouble since, and I haven't had spiritual trouble since.
This is profound. Everybody has their own trips, some good, some bad. But how did it help you in the fearless sense? Because I'm telling you, there are too many square cats out there today that should be dosing because they would lose that inhibition and they would become more introspective. But obviously, what you are doing is you are creating new vocabulary in music, and that is a bold step. When Coltrane was doing that, white journalists like myself called it hate music. I hope I wouldn't have called it hate music, but I don't know. And so how did
it... Well, with that, I can answer your question.
Yep.
With that experience, I lost my fear of death. With that experience, and I was 21, I realized, in fact, that there is no such thing as death. It's a misnomer. Energy can never be created or destroyed, the first law of thermodynamics. If energy can never be created or destroyed, that means that death is a fake obsession that's been forced on the culture to teach us how to be, good robots and to teach us how to be scared. So when I say I got lucky with that experience, I mean that I truly feel like I got lucky. With that first psychedelic experience, I realized that death was a lie. And when you lose your fear of death, you lose all fear. That's really all any of us are scared of. That's the reason people get on stage and play it safe and half-ass it, is because they're scared to die. That's what it all comes down to, is a fear of death. And when I was 21, I got lucky. I lost my fear of death, and that's why I improvise and play music the way that I do. It's because I'm not scared to die. I know that it's chicanery and trickery. It's like, it's just BS. There is no such thing as death. It's just a bad name for a beautiful transition. We never stop. We keep going forever. So if you're not scared of death, then what do you have left to be scared of?
Well, I'm having I feel like I'm on peyote right now a little bit, but I just wanted to, I needed to ask you about your concept of love and how you bring love to the world, because I I just know that when I talked to Reed, he said that you guys put together this album with Jacob Fred Jazz Odyssey, and then he wound up, I don't know, not in a great headspace, and he wound up leaving the band. And only after he left the band was the album released. And I don't really care about like the why that happened in this, but what was so cool for me, because I'm so obsessed with Love, is that you guys were playing last week again for the first time in I don't know how many years. And to me, it was one of the most inspiring musical collaborations to come back together. I just was hoping you could enlighten the audience about your concept of Love, and then what the feelings that you had about playing with Reed after quite a little bit of a hiatus.
Well, I mean, love means something different to every single human on this planet. And at the same time, it's this overriding magic that we can tap into. I mean, it's so much. It's so complex. I mean, love, while it is a very individualistic choice and mission and discipline, I mean, I think love on an individual level comes down to mental, spiritual, emotional self-discipline. I think love is something that has to be practiced in the same way that we practice the piano.
Absolutely.
Love isn't some magical, like cloud that like floats around that like for me again, Jake, it's a great question, but I mean, I think love has to be practiced. I think love comes from hard work and self-discipline. I don't know if love is some kind of magical, beautiful purple cloud that drips down from the heavens. I think love is just a spiritual practice, and it's an emotional practice, a physical practice. Love is controlling your words and choosing your words. Love is controlling your thoughts and choosing your thoughts. Love is controlling your breath, and if you can control your breath, you can control your thoughts and your words, and then you can control your life. I mean, love is work, It's not magic, but it can become magic when you become disciplined within it.
I just, Brian, I was hoping we could set up a time to do set two. We burned through this about 55 minutes here, but it's really been great to connect with you. I mean, I think at the end of the day, as a husband and father of two kids, it is work, because when you're providing authentic love, and when you are sort of not. So it is total work. And if you work, I was just at a wedding, and I had 3 gin and tonics in me. I got up at the wedding, and I said the two people were clearly in love with each other, like genuinely in love. I said, love is work, and if you don't like going to work, then you're not going to be happy, And that, and so I mean, and I got these 80-year-old cats, you're right on, man, you're doing, and it's like, but I know that in my construct, in my little hermetically sealed bubble, it is work, and it takes a lot of effort. And that purple cloud will come only when true nature reveals itself, like when you get this idea to start putting out pithy comments about if Obamacare actually worked, and then all of a sudden you get 7,000 comments. That was just not premeditated, or you conceive a child, or whatever it is. That is the byproduct of the work. But my man, you were on fire today, and let's try to pick something up around Hanukkah, Christmas time, if that's possible.
Heck yeah, man! I'll be back in Santa Fe. I have to leave. I have to leave in a couple days. I mean, speaking of love, I'm about to go do 4 shows with Nola Tet, which is Vidakovich, James Singleton, Mike Dillon, and myself. And I mean,
jeez, Vidakovich. I got to get to Vidakovich, dude. Yeah, that cat's a badass.
Dude, the secret to my success is making sure I'm always hanging out with people that are not just better musicians than I am, but better people than I am. I think you can only be as good a musician as you are a human. If you want to know how to be a great musician, be a great human. And those are the people I spend time with. And so I'm super blessed and lucky in this life. I get to spend time around my heroes. and
When you
I want to be better.
You're enough of the good talk. When are you coming to Tucson, brother? I mean, we got to get you down here with Chamberlain in a duo setting.
I love Tucson.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that place.
I mean, we haven't gotten gentrified like Portland or Austin, Texas. We're still just a desert rock town at the core. So we're waiting.
That's what I love about it. That's what I love about it. I've made it to your Jim and Mineral show once, and I had way too much fun. I absolutely thought that the people in the town and just the town itself, it just seems like a real.
Yeah, that's as close to a merry prankster procession as you're ever going to get. That's a good time. But I want you guys to come gig. I'm going to find a venue for you. I want you guys to road trip it down here, and then we'll do it in studio. Or anyway, I had a ball, man. Keep burning, man. And I'm going to blow this stuff all over Facebook tonight. So just be ready for it.
Awesome, man. Thanks for the great questions, and I appreciate your depth of spirit, man. Appreciate you doing what you do. Thanks for caring about the real cats.
Yeah, love always, man. Be good.
All right.
Peace.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah, man. Peace. And we'll be right back with Brandon Decker on the Jake Feinberg Show.